ready to go. All right, it being 5 o'clock. Agenda review and disposition, any changes or additions?
Just under non-public session, I need to add student issue.
Okay, privilege of the floor, welcome.
Thanks. I do want to say something, Lisa. I just want to say thank you to the administrative, staff and the teachers for, my daughter came in as a freshman, she had a great year, so just want to say thank you for all your hard work.
Thanks, Amy.
Yeah.
Okay, approval of the minutes for May 6th. Did anybody see anything?
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, by Paul, second by Sheila. All those in favor? Opposed, abstentions for attendance, okay. Abstention for Phil. All right, great. Student report,
No,
they're all...
I'm sorry, Lisa.
Oh, did you not? Okay, I thought...
No, I voted yes.
Okay.
With my hands, I'm sorry.
Okay, no abstentions, okay.
I am listening though.
All right, so no student.
No, I'm going to include it in mine.
Okay, great. Principal's
Yeah.
report.
All right. Gosh, in prepping for tonight, I decided to work backward because it's been a little bit since we've seen you, and so much has happened. And secondly, I decided that it was really important to just share with you all of the amazing celebrations that we've been able to have since I've seen you. So I did bring some of our artifacts with me tonight. So as I'm talking about some of the things that have happened and some of the amazing accomplishments our students have had since we've been together, I have some trophies. There is the photograph I'm going to speak of. So there's just some things if you want to take a peek at it after we're done tonight. I definitely would encourage you to do so. So recently we celebrated 168 graduates, 3 retiring teachers, a Gold Key Art Award, and a boys lacrosse state championship, to sum it up. But in all sincerity, I think that we are probably one of the only high schools in the state that was able to graduate without rain. We ended up moving to the rain date, which was Sunday. The skies cleared, the sun came out, and we had an amazing commencement for the class of 2025. Carolee Simmons was the guest speaker, and she gave her 10 accolades of advice to the outgoing graduates. Across the stage, we did graduate. If you remember, we approved 2 different pathways of graduation this year, one with honors and one career ready. And I'm happy to report that we had 21 who graduated with honors, and we had 38 career ready pathway students, either through a CTE completer of ours, or they might have gone above and beyond with an extended learning opportunity in a field of choice. So those were really exciting celebrations for us. They wore stoles that indicated such, and we had some help from within our own community to get those stoles ready for the graduates. So it was really a nice day for the community. It was really packed. So it's a good reminder for me that trying to keep it outside and open to all is probably the best way to go in the future. So we will continue to do so. The Friday before graduation, we also enjoyed baccalaureate. I would say that in the years that I've been here, the class of 2025, family and friends filled the Congregational Church. Despite the rain that evening, which was pretty terrible that evening, we really enjoyed a nice non-denominational service and some words of advice from Tom Lamb, who at that event was the guest speaker. So that was great to see. Later in June, I have spoke of this award before, but Lynn Sanborn and Mary Boyle, our art teachers, accompanied Bryn Daigle and her mom Diana to Carnegie Hall to receive this National Key Art Award. And I bring it back to you because when they returned from the trip, they were so filled with appreciation and just in awe of the artists that they were surrounded by. Over 300 kids submit work. 110 kids are presented with award, but only 2,000 are awarded at the level that Bryn was awarded. So I did bring the artwork with me tonight. I do feel like we've talked about this award, we've talked about Bryn, but I thought maybe if you were able to see the work, it's digital art that she was awarded in. So I have it here. I also brought for you the program of the whole weekend that she was part of, and then the yearbook is there, which is the culmination of all of the student artists that were recognized at that event. So I just wanted to bring it back to you. It was just a huge recognition for Bryn, but also just for the PRHS art department, to be able to, create an artist here who's, kind of came right up through the ranks. I think Thornton Elementary School, I can't remember where Bryn came through, but
Yeah,
Thornton. It was amazing. So just another congratulations to her. Following that, I did bring Mr. Gunn. You often approve the music in the art in the parks competition he goes to annually in Massachusetts. This year he returned with a first place in concert band, a first place of Superior in concert choir, and a first place of an excellent rating in jazz.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, so huge wins for Plymouth Regional in music, and then he did receive the overall best concert choir for the entire high school division. So I did, again, bring those trophies that he brought back. That hardware often lives in a trophy case, and I just felt like it was worth bringing with me tonight. So if you see him, if you ever get a chance to just attend our concerts, the spring concert also in May was amazing. But congratulations to Will and his kids. Dr. McGlone and her health science students late in the spring came to me with a request to host a second blood drive. We annually host a blood drive. This year the turnout was so great that Red Cross came back to us and said, if you host another one, you'll be set up for scholarship money. So the Ossipee kids, the health science students, Dr. McGlone set up a second. We exceeded the expectations. Therefore, we were able to award 10 students $100 scholarship money. She awarded it to her seniors who had either donated twice or volunteered twice. And they were recognized at Senior Scholarship Night. So they also then wore a red cord at graduation, which was a little bit too late in the program, so I just wanted to make sure it was publicly recognized what the red cord was for. In addition to the scholarship night, it would be hard to tell you everything we did that night because it's over 3 hours of time that we're recognizing our seniors, but just in summary, we awarded $187,000 to 87 graduating seniors, 70 of which I think is a pretty high number in terms of how many kids get recognized for New Hampshire scholars in one graduating class. So we did recognize 70 of them as New Hampshire scholars. We then recognized an additional 34 of them who reached the Presidential Academic Achievement Award, which is maintaining a 3.5 or higher over a 2-year period of time. So this class of 2025 definitely left its mark. They were big in numbers from the get-go. They were strong athletically, they were strong academically, and it really, when it came time to celebrate them and put it paper to pencil, they really showed some strength. So it is a really fun spring to celebrate them. And for me, as they're my first graduating class, we really had some fun together. So I just kind of wanted to give you a summary of that. And last but not least, but certainly first time in program history, our boys lacrosse team went on to win the Division III state championship on Saturday in Laconia, kind of upsetting an undefeated team Co-Brown. So again, I just wanted to recognize the kids, Coach Malsoff, Dave Hand, Chris Livlicott, Marcus Morrell, and John Mayer, the coaching staff, and we're really proud of them and all the work that they did to get there. So big congratulations to lots of kids in the spring of 2025. In terms of teaching and learning, I just wanted to let you know that next week we'll be running our 4th Summer Institute, which I kind of brought with me to Plymouth Regional High School, which is, you know, really nothing other than some uninterrupted professional time for teachers. So on June 23rd, 24th, and 25th, if my memory is right, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we will be here. We have 32 teachers that have opted in. And we will continue to develop some of that curriculum that we showed you with the curriculum blueprint in terms of unit planning and assessment practices. And specifically, we're going to focus on that vision of a graduate work that we kind of left off with last time we were together. So we're excited about that. Oh, I just wanted to circle back to graduation real quick because I know Janice doesn't like me to recognize her, so because she's not here, I'm going to recognize her tonight. It would be unfair for me not to recognize the details that she manages to get graduation, you know, and obviously it's the first time I've sat in the office I'm sitting in adjacent to hers, you know, program and phone calls and flowers and just, she has it. I mean, she knows it so well. Sometimes I had to say, you got to tell me how this goes. Like, you have it all in your head. But big thanks to her, because it really wouldn't go off as well as it does without all of her work behind the scenes. It is truly behind the scenes work. So just thank you to her. And then recently, well, you know that we're taking care of the locker room drains this summer, which is exciting. It does rip up the bottom floor of the school all the way down that athletic hallway and into the science room, so there'll be some closed off spaces. One of those important closed off spaces for lots of our kids is the weight room. So I just wanted to recognize Tom Lamb and Ryan Frazier and a number of our dedicated athletes. They have moved the weight room to two of the barns out here with Park and Rec. So it's so unbelievable. I said to someone, like, they're gonna like it out here. Like, you've created a monster here doing this. But I mean, talk about teamwork and extra hours and manual labor to get that. I think we kind of have our first sets of kids in there tonight. It is being supervised by all of our, you know, officially supervised adults who would have supervised weight room time here in the building. It's just happening out here in the barn. But a great opportunity for our kids to, you know, keep exercising and be here rather than be somewhere else. So, and that takes care of my report, unless you have any other questions for me about anything.
Okay, very thorough, thank you.
Sure.
Our next committee meetings will probably be in September. We'll figure that out later. Discussion items, end of the year closeout budget.
Sure, so this is the time of year we kind of go through how we did budget-wise, what some options are. We have a couple end-of-year projects that we've been talking about for a while, the AC1, AC3, the tennis courts, and then I have a special ed request, but that's it. But I wanted to first have Dan just kind of go over where we're at, and before we go over that, and then I'll have Janet go over the projects.
Oops. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yep.
Thank you. Yes.
So, what we're seeing as of this month, at the end of the month, we're projecting, I don't want to walk through all the details unless you have additional questions, but focusing on the left side of this sheet, as of this afternoon, the unexpended balance in the budget is $1.469 million. I'm expecting known bills that will still come in will be some additional funding of the health insurance for deductibles, and we're waiting on 2 invoices from the town of Plymouth, the second half of each bill, one for the school resource officer and one for the portion of the Park and Rec staff. There's also some encumbrances that are going to be liquidated, and we do have one small revenue shortfall. So at this point in time, I would project that the June 30th fund balance would be approximately $1.47 million. Just following through to the end of that left side of this piece of paper. Last year, there was a retained fund balance of $328,437, which was the maximum allowed. During the budget process this past winter, you committed $178,000 of that to be a fund balance to reduce the impact of next year's budget on the tax rates, leaving a balance of $150,000. If I take the estimate of what the capacity this fall would be for retained fund balance, I believe that number is accurate, and you could retain, if you chose to, an additional $194,000, meaning the $150,000 that was remaining from last year's retained, plus an additional $194,000 to equal that $344,000 number. Any amount in remaining fund balance would then as well go to offset tax rate this fall. The right side of the paper really just gives you an indication of the sources for the underspending of this year's approved budget. The largest ones being special ed related, as always, whether it be tuition or transportation. There's a direct correlation between those two being under budget. Health insurance, with a large portion of the budget expense being to fund deductibles, which have not been necessary to fully utilize by using better providers, and as well as some teacher exchange at the beginning of the year in terms of people coming in at a lower level than the people who had left, or
And we were unable to fill a position as well, so that's why that surplus is there. Same as last year in custodial aides and in regular education. So remember, we were not able to fill that Spanish position, but you see there's, under the regular ed tech service, 3 lines down, you'll see that's overspent because we did purchase a program to help with that. So, same with the special ed out of district tuition, there's a surplus there, but in the next line down, you'll see is overspent because those are students that have come back. So it's kind of a moving target, which is usual.
So, are there any questions about that?
Thank you, Lisa. Special ed liquidation, what's that?
So that's a case where it ties in to a certain extent with sped purchase services. So a purchase order will be entered at a time that a need is determined. And then a student's programming might change, or there might be other reasons why. And just because of the timing of everything that's going on at year end, there's 2 POs in particular that are going to be reduced specifically because of everything else going on in the office. The POs just haven't been closed yet, but I wanted to provide you that accurate information.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions?
So I'm going to move right into the projects, so you can consider both and what you have left over, what goes back, what gets retained, and what you can consider. So I'm going to have Janet review the 3 projects. So the first one's the AC1, AC3, which we have been talking about all year. That's your largest cost. So if that gets approved tonight, it would be done just at the end of school for next year because it would disrupt. But those funds, what were the funds for that piece?
So in total, $795,135 for both AC3, AC1.
Which we are expecting a high cost with that piece. The other piece that we'd like to get approved is the tennis courts that we've been talking about. That's the surfaces is, for a better lack of lumpy.
It's just a complete resurface and recoating.
Yeah.
For $30,000. And then
Was that 30,000?
yeah. And you have a special ed.
And then the last piece for any unanticipated, and I would need, and that's for new students coming in, anticipated cost to William White Services, which are in-house services at $225,000. So those are our 3 requests for tonight, moving forward. With those totals, Dan, before we have a conversation, what does that leave us, or leave the board with as far as options for the end of the year?
I'm sorry, just going to ensure. So it was a $30,000 for the tennis courts, a $795 for the AC1, AC3.
$795, $135.
Yeah. And then the PO, the SPED one request, sorry?
225.
225. Thank you. So those would total $1,050,000. And if the board were to vote to retain the maximum amount available, that would take another $195,000 into the retained fund balance, which would bring your total reduction to the projected fund balance of $1.255 million. Which would, what that essentially means is that an additional $225,000 above the $178 that was budgeted would go into the unretained fund balance to reduce the impact of next fall's tax rate to support the budget that was approved for next year. Does that make sense? I know sometimes I speak too fast and get too deep into the weeds, but I want to make sure I'm clear about that.
So you're saying 403,000? Is that what, I added the 225 and the 178?
Correct.
Okay.
So instead of the unretained fund balance, which goes back to reduce the tax impact.
Right.
Being 178 would be the 403, correct.
Okay. Questions for Dan? Thoughts? Yes.
So that 403, if that's what we do, that will sort of keep us sort of level from last year. I mean, it's not terribly different than,
Yeah, I mean, so it's going to still be a small increase, but
But we're
in terms of
not-
talking about the net assessment,
yeah, we're not like kind of doing this like.
correct,
Oh,
correct. It would minimize the
The swing.
swing,
yeah, okay.
which also assists when you're going into the following year evaluating.
And I think, for the future, we have talked about through the budget process is maybe, kind of moving away from this a little bit and looking at more of a capital reserve. Do we put, do we fund that as far as the projects and stuff like that, just to have some other tools in the toolbox moving forward?
Because that's not the history here.
Correct.
Just
but
to
I
state
think-
it out loud,
Yes,
that's
yes,
not
that
the
is not the
history.
history.
Yeah.
A lot of our districts have moved to that, where they can put a certain portion right into that to fund that. So it's something we can talk about at retreat, or the budget process, either way. But no, never, not as long as I've been around,
Yeah, me too.
yeah.
Kyla, do you think the 225,000, I mean, there's obviously every year considerable amount of surpluses in special ed. You don't think, like you said, moving parts are wash, that 225 can't be absorbed by some of the surpluses we've traditionally known to have?
Well, this one would be above and beyond what we already have projected for next year. I mean, it could. It's the piece I'm concerned about a little bit is the new legislation going through, especially around the municipality piece, special ed, as far as funding that piece and adequacy. So I just, part of these I'm a little concerned about that. So just budgeting for it now, I think would help us, given that we do have some new move-ins.
And if we pursue the cohort thing, that would be a couple of years down the road.
So the cohort thing, right, there's no money attached to it right now. The special ed consortium that I brought to you the last meeting, at the SAU meeting actually, is to just explore, because we're not the only district in this predicament, right? There's this target of movement of big money, millions in most districts, you know what I mean? We're close to that here. Mm-hmm. And it's for students with significant disabilities that either don't end up coming to your school or going to a different school, and you're not, you're absorbing these costs that are astronomical, and there's no way to really make any common sense out of budgeting for it, I guess. So we're looking for this hub with Lakes Region to kind of share services so we can bring down those costs. Because remember, right now, if we're placing the kids, it's gone from $200,000 to $600,000 to keep a kid in a residential placement or a hospital, which is a huge number for one student. So even if we can cut that cost in half by consolidating and sharing some other services we'll see, but it's really at the exploratory phase right now.
And the other question I have for you is AC1 and AC3, we're gonna get a discount because we're doing them together.
So the pricing is down because
Well,
of
yeah,
that.
I mean,
Yeah.
if you do it separately, you have
Yeah.
to bring everybody back and
Yeah, it'll
equipment,
go up.
and yeah, so definitely they recommended in this quote to do it all at the same time.
That's what CCI, recommended.
Yeah.
It's also, if I could just jump in
Yeah.
on that, it's not just a
Yeah.
matter of having the people here at the same time and the equipment at the same time, it's a matter of the access point. So if you don't do AC1 when you do the bigger unit AC3, and Paul could, I'm sure, speak to this much better than I can, but the access to AC1 would be completely sealed off with a new AC3, and you'd have to rip out your new equipment to get to the older equipment, even if it's not, they're both past useful life, but
Both are way beyond end of life.
So we've got
Yes.
our money's worth.
Yes, way beyond.
I think the number that the most recent number we heard was that they're both circa the early 70s.
Early they have not been touched since.
Right. So, right, we can't.
The only reason AC3 is working right now, to be honest with you, is because a part was custom machined. A pulley system, I think it was,
Yeah,
or
a
a drive
shaft.
shaft, was custom machined earlier this year. It was down for a while, and Mark was able to find a machine shop to create a part to get it running this current school year.
And that's a second shaft.
Yeah. Which is why we're kind of pushing to get this done.
And that sets us straight pretty much for heat and air in the building.
The only other piece
Yeah.
that's left
Yeah,
is,
is science. So it's a little tricky because now we're kind of ripping up the floor, but we do have a design that could come in and do kind of what we've done before, is get us a design to air condition science, which would include the weight room. So
The
that
last-
whole, the last bit of it is the first floor.
Okay.
so that's usually around
It's usually around 10.
10 as far as getting that done, 10 grand. So we can move forward with that.
Any more questions or thoughts?
Actually, I do have one. Is there anything else legislatively that is apt to impact us, like when they were talking about sending kids to any?
Open enrollment, if open enrollment passes, it will significantly change the face of public education in New Hampshire. And I'm not sure how, I can't even figure out the formula at this point, but if it doesn't matter where you live and you go to school somewhere else, I'm not sure how that's gonna impact those who choose to opt into open enrollment, because it's gonna almost force districts to move into that, in my opinion, as far as that piece and the movement. I'm not sure, because the adequacy, 80% of the adequacy is gonna follow the kid.
So they have some sort of formula.
They have
that
some sort of formula, I mean,
I can speak to it a little bit.
yeah,
So so again, the legislation hasn't been completely finalized, but it looks pretty certain. It's been passed by the legislative houses, but the governor hasn't signed it yet.
in
But
my understanding, it's in a bullying,
it's been embedded in other legislation.
embedded into a
So
bullying.
here's the piece that you guys most might want to hear, is that if a student goes to an open enrollment school, the school of residence pays the receiving school 80% of their previous year's cost per pupil. Right, so let's say this cost per pupil here is $23,000 this year, right? And this takes effect July 1, so it could happen for the year we've already budgeted for, right? A student who's resident for one of these 7 towns decides, I want to go to Linwood High School next year, or 10 students. You're going to have, for each one of those students, 80% of this year's cost per pupil times the number of students, you're going to be writing a check to Linwood High School.
plus special ed.
Plus,
There's
special ed always trails to the district of residence, but. So it's of concern for all schools. I mean, I'm more worried about our elementaries, to be honest with you, but the impact is real, right? You've got next year's, you don't have that expense in next year's budget, but you might have to come up with it.
Phil?
Two questions. One, it seems as though we discussed at the School Boards Association earlier in the process, a school could refuse to take special needs kids. And then secondly, I don't know if that's still, I'm asking you.
Yeah.
Then secondly, who handles transportation in that case?
The parents.
The parents, okay,
Yeah.
so,
So the family is responsible for transportation.
Okay, 'cause that wasn't
They can
determined either.
transport to a receiving school's bus stop.
A
Like-
bus, so that impacts our busing too, like, they can just go to a bus stop, drop the kids off at the bus stop.
So
Closest to them.
if this school chose to become an open enrollment school, you could see some revenue.
right.
But that could come with kids from other towns being dropped at our bus stops. But if any of our students chose a school, I'm just using the example Linwood.
Yeah.
Their parents would have to take them to a Lincoln or Woodstock bus stop, not all the way necessarily to the school, but then this school's writing the check for the tuition. And it's much more than the adequacy money, right? It's adequacy is approximately $4,000 to $5,000 depending on the nature of the student, and tuition is, cost per student is in excess of $23,000. Because it's not the cost per student at the state formula, which takes out a whole bunch of things.
Yeah.
It's the cost. It's the total budget spent of the school divided by the population, which is a significantly higher number.
Does that number include special ed costs, or is that a separate?
That's a great question, and I don't know that those details have been worked out yet. Certainly, the total cost of the school divided by the number of pupils includes special ed costs, but I don't know if you. I don't know that our legislature has concerned itself with details like that.
I just think it's scary that they've passed legislation without doing a thorough analysis of what it's going to cost the respective districts. I mean, that's,
The financial
speaking
note.
of unfunded mandates.
So there's this process called a financial note, and the financial note was largely blank on that was attached to the legislation.
Yes.
And the theory was, the theory was that I heard vocalized from the legislature was, well, if the pupils leave, then the cost per pupil goes down because they don't have those expenses anymore. Sorry,
But
Bonnie.
You may have already said this, but how is it determined what schools become open enrollment?
Well, you guys are gonna have to decide, once the legislation goes through, we're gonna have to look at it at our retreat and to see what you wanna do. Personally, I think the high school would be a district of choice, right, for this
Yeah,
area?
yeah.
Where, I mean, we already get full tuition from other districts.
Right.
They'll pay full boat for kids to come here. It's, a lot of the question has been around, sports. Do kids follow the best sports teams around? How many transfers can you get? Because under NHIA, you can only transfer, it's a one time. And it just becomes null and void with it just disrupts, something like that too, where kids can choose where the best team is and try to go.
Okay.
So, there's going to be some capacity about how many students you can let in, but it's just something financially that could impact here. Maybe to the good of Plymouth Regional High School, but
Yeah.
but it depends on what limitations are in there, right?
Yeah.
And then once you have a kid, you have to keep them. Say all of a sudden we get a bump in enrollment and then we have 15 extra kids in one of the grades, then what? So there's a lot of unanswered questions for legislation that may be in place for
Yeah.
July 1.
So if we had other students say we have 10 other students that come here, would that affect the teachers and how many teachers we need per?
Yeah,
class?
or I mean,
Yeah.
as if it gets that much higher,
And
like
have,
right now with the Bridgewater,
whatever
Hebron, Groton, we're
Right.
fine absorbing those kids, but you get
Right.
higher than that. You look at the capacity of this building, it can fit
Right.
a lot more kids, but that impacts
But we need
the
more
number of
teachers then.
teachers, right?
Yeah.
Right.
You have to post slots on your website,
Yeah.
availability.
Oh,
But
for students.
yeah, but to bring up the Pasquani example, like right now, you have a contract in place with that new school district. They're paying 100% of your cost per student in tuition. This legislation goes through and they come back to you with your tuition contract and say, oh no, we're only giving you 80%.
So I don't want to get too caught up in the details because I
Sorry.
don't know what's going to go on
Yeah.
with it, but
But
it's
we'll
definitely
figure it out.
something coming. If the governor signs it, it will impact public schools.
Bernie, then
But-
Phil, and then Mary Beth.
if your school chooses not to be an open enrollment school, can your students still choose to go elsewhere?
There's a school voucher system that has been just passed. The governor did sign that to take the limit off of that.
But,
So that's separate than open enrollment, not the same.
I think the answer to her question is yes.
Yes.
So if we decided, no, we're not going to take students, but Linwood, in your example, is taking students, our students could still say, well, we want to go to Linwood.
Yeah, and I
I'm not
think,
sure on that. I'm not sure on the open enrollment. We have to look at that, ascending, receiving district.
I think it all goes to this tremendous uncertainty, right? That this legislative session has brought to the world of finance and public education, which sort of it's one underlying reason it may make sense for you to keep some of the money you have available right now to guard against this uncertainty that we know is coming at us for July 1, like the special ed purchase order that she recommended you consider.
Bill?
I guess, I gotta think, oh my, oh God. I'll have to come
All
back.
right, Mary Beth?
The students can just enroll, they don't have to apply. There's no criteria, right? Grades.
You can, so right now, there's a district that does open enrollment. There is an application process.
Okay.
I'm not sure you can refuse a child based on special education.
Okay.
I would guess not.
Yes.
And I would guess no, given everything else that.
Phil?
Would it be, if we're going to discuss this at the retreat, and we have to make a decision one way or the other, would it be possible to have, and what you have to date for class sizes in each class? I mean, if we find that in our science classes, we're at the limit, that to me would influence my vote as to whether we do or not. I mean, how crowded are some of our classes? Is that possible?
Yes,
I think,
absolutely.
yeah, we'll have all those numbers anyways, but I think I would get advice from the Superintendent's Association and New Hampshire school boards as far as, do we have to make a decision? What if we don't make a decision and kind of wait to see what happens with that too? But we'll have everything
Because
that we'll need.
when we discussed it at the School Boards Association, they didn't have the answer to I thought they said, special ed, they weren't guaranteed to come in if you said no. They did say that if capacity was not to worry about it because the receiving district would have to
Determine the
provide
capacity.
staff if you needed it, but that's, I don't know what the average, you're figuring is an average price now per staff member with, retirement benefits and so on. That's a hefty chunk of money.
Okay.
So yes, Bernie, to your question, there is other legislation that could impact the budget. So back to the
Yeah.
budget piece. If you're comfortable moving forward with the projects, I would ask that you vote on each one of them separately. And then at the end, vote on the retained fund balance.
Kyla, can you put them in an order of importance for us? Because I'm not
Sure,
sure people are comfortable with all three. So what would
Yeah.
be your choices?
So I would recommend AC3, AC1 as in the first order of priority for $795,135.
And the tennis courts have to be done.
Yeah, I would do the.
I mean, and then I would put third as the special ed
Special ed.
services, but then again, that's a risk too, so that's how I would put those.
Okay.
I'll make the motion, go ahead with AC1 and AC3.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. All right, so that's that one.
If you could just put the cost in there, so, okay. And then the next would be to to resurface the tennis courts for $28,940.
Okay.
Make a motion for the tennis courts.
We haven't put much into tennis in a while.
Well, no, and it's ruined. It's, you can't play on it, right?
Yeah.
right,
Yeah, we'd have to send them out to play if
Okay.
we don't, especially by next spring with another winter of heaving, I think it would be, we wouldn't be able to play here. We wouldn't be able to play a match here, let's just say that,
Okay,
yeah.
all right, so Paul made that motion.
I'll
Do you want to
second it.
Second it. Bernie, all those in favor? Opposed, abstentions? Okay. All right,
And then lastly, the purchase order towards Bill White services for $225,000.
I think I came in on the tail end of that. Can you just share the details with that?
Sure, I mean,
Sorry.
so it's usually due to unanticipated students that are coming in.
Okay.
Bill White Services provides services in and out of the building at times. So for instance, it's anything from consulting to providing aides that have different qualifications that deal with more aggressive students or certain therapies.
Thank you.
Phil?
For that amount, can't that come out of just the unreserved fund balance? No,
The retain?
yeah, the retained. So do we need that if we have access to that retained balance?
Does that change that?
It doesn't change it. The short answer to your question is yes, you would, if those services were necessary, that you could access a retained fund balance to provide them.
Okay.
However, it would reduce your capacity to deal with any other issues.
Right, but how many times have we had?
Yeah, not
You know,
many. And then
not
again,
many, you
just
know,
some
so,
of the
yeah.
surplus, might be worth rolling the dice with our surpluses of special ed.
Yeah, and you can replenish that the next year.
Correct, but there's less, if the need was there, there's less to offset the budget the following year as you voted to this year, but it's
Yeah.
completely your choice.
Phil?
Then I would move we do not move forward with the special ed of $225,000.
I don't think we need to vote on that, but what are people's feelings about it to not put that, approve that tonight?
I thought that we were approving all three.
Well, you're saying not to approve number 3,
Right.
though? Yeah,
Yes.
so we're not approving number 3.
Correct.
So that's what I'm saying to
That's what
people,
that's
is
my
where are
motion,
people
yeah.
at about that?
Yeah.
So it would, everybody understands Phil's saying basically roll the dice, put it off to the side, we can have access to it, but we always have such a surplus in special ed.
Right.
What if we did a different amount, did half, or?
Yeah, how do people feel about that? Do less
I
than,
have a question.
yes.
Will you just verify, was this anticipated costs or unanticipated?
Unanticipated.
Okay.
You can do half. Does that do anything to the swing too, as far as the balance?
So half is approximately $100,000. And, before I run, what I can do, I think may be helpful to provide an expression of what a $100,000 change does to the tax rate. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So the impact of $100,000 that we could talk about either direction on the tax rates of the 7 towns range from 1 to 3 cents. 4 towns are at 2 cents, 2 towns are at 3 cents, and 1 town is at 1 cent in terms of what $100,000 does to the tax rates of the 7 towns. Does that make any sense?
Well, yeah, but would you add that to the 403,000? Or
So-
the 178, yes, but the 220?
So what I'm happy to do is, once you decide whether or not you're going to encumber anything, in addition to the 2 that you've already voted, I can give you a projection of the change in the unretained fund balance, which impacts the tax rate, and I can tell you how it's going to change from what you projected when you put the budget in front of the voters in March. Does that make any sense? I mean, maybe I'm not understanding the question correctly.
I think Lisa's just looking for the unreserved fund balance. Like,
Okay,
so what that's,
so-
it was gonna be 400 something, so if it's cutting in half, it's gonna be 500 something.
I guess I would ask a clarifying question. Maybe it's important to take the next contemplated or recommended for contemplation motion, and I don't mean, Phil has a motion on the floor, but I guess I would want to know if you intend to retain the maximum amount available, which you haven't voted on yet, right? Because that eats
The
away
high
at the.
school always has voted to do so, to retain as much as possible.
Right.
Okay, so,
And I think Phil's question was, does that help us with an unanticipated special ed cost?
so if you voted to retain the maximum amount available, you would go into next year with a retained fund balance of $345,000, $344,089. That's on the lower left-hand corner of the page I handed out earlier. Right, so if you're retaining $344,089, that takes about $200,000 from your existing number. And you just voted to approve $824,000 in spending. So you're reducing the projected fund balance by approximately $1,024,000, which would add $445,000 to the $178 you've already committed during the budget cycle.
I'm following you, yes.
So that
Yes.
$445,000 added to what was in the budget that was put before the voters in March would change the tax rates by 4 times the numbers I just said, or 4.5 times, so roughly
Okay.
9 cents, 9 cents, 5 cents, 12 cents, 9 cents, 9 cents, 12 cents.
So would that put us then into that swing? Because we'd be putting a lot,
So
This year.
it would, so again, instead of having a unreserved fund balance that's a revenue in the fall to offset taxes of 178, it would be closer to 700,000. And that would be something you'd have to overcome when building the FY27 budget and projecting the impact of the FY27 budget a year from now.
so this is going to sound like a really complicated question, but if we were to vote at the retreat or look into doing capital reserves,
Yep.
would that help or hinder us?
There's nothing you can do about that this year, because
So
the
that would be
capital reserve
going
account has to be
forward.
approved by the voters,
Okay,
right?
So that would have to go in March.
Correct.
So,
But you could also say to the administration, find 100,000 in the budget and start a capital reserve account in the next budget, 26, 27.
Well, it
If
has
you
to.
could.
So back to the previous so I just want to be clear that if this went the way it's going, and I'm not taking a position either way, I'm just saying, if the following year's budget that you build this coming fall were flat, 0 increase, it would still portray a $700,000 increase in net assessments. I didn't mean to cut you off, I'm sorry.
No, it's just a question about
Okay,
capital
Beth.
reserves. How is it different being in a capital reserve? And how does it affect the taxpayer?
So what some communities and school districts have found it helpful to do is to establish a capital reserve, fund it on a consistent basis or an inconsistent basis with fund balances, right? And then when you have big projects come along, the projects are funded out of that capital reserve account and never impact the operating budget or the operating budget's effect on the tax rate. Does that make sense?
Which we sometimes get criticized for because the voters don't feel like they're part of the process. I've heard that
Okay.
more than I can count, yes.
But the other thing, I believe, is you've already raised that money once,
Right.
so you don't have to raise it again. Because it's in, and you're required to put any, if the wording of it is going to be any unanticipated surplus, X amount will go to the capital reserve
Yes.
fund. You've already raised that money, so
Right.
there's not going to be an impact on taxes.
And normally, those funds are used for operational
They're used for whatever's on your CIP plan.
Okay.
So any projects.
CIP, sorry, what's
Yeah,
CIP?
capital improvement plan,
Thank
so
you.
any buildings and so yes,
Yeah.
usually
Yeah.
building projects.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Phil?
And I guess if we do not move forward with the 225,000 and we have to take that out of the money that's there, that still leaves us 100 plus close to $200,000 for any unanticipated emergencies.
There is $178,000 in your there's $150,000 currently in the retained fund balance.
So there would,
Plus, you're gonna build it to, if you have that other motion, you would build it up to 344,
right, so
089.
we'd still be covered for anything unanticipated, whether it be special ed or, the furnace goes to heck or
Yeah, you
whatever.
can use it for, there's
So,
no
okay,
restrictions
all right.
on
You
it.
can use it for any lawful purpose, the
Yes,
retained fund
right.
balance.
They used, they changed that
Okay.
last year.
So there's really kind of two things going on. One is people are nervous about the swing, and the other is, do we have the money if we need it?
Yeah.
We'll roll the dice on the special ed, but do we have the money if we need it? That's really what we're talking about. And then the third issue is capital. Should we be putting money aside and have the voters vote on it and then choose what we're gonna do with it? A lot of people, that's your transparency issue that's out there nowadays. Right? Anything?
Yeah, but nothing we can do about that capital reserve now. It's just
Right.
something I've heard through the budget process and that, we do in some of the other towns that people seem to like.
Yeah,
for the
we've,
most
I've
part.
used them in the past.
Have we had one in the past?
I mean, I think there is one.
There
is one,
It's just,
currently.
there's just not much.
There's about $1,500
Yeah,
right now.
okay.
in-
It's just not part of our strategy.
Correct, it has been. And within this SAU alone, there are some communities that prefer to see what's left over at the end of the year, pick off items on their capital reserve. And there's some communities that prefer to, put it into a capital reserve and have.
Yeah, it really is split.
It is.
Schools and towns.
Yep.
Municipalities as well.
Yep.
But, for an example, this $800,000, that could be, we could be highly criticized for that. That's almost $1 million from a surplus that people feel we should turn back. That's the quandary that I wish we weren't faced with.
So,
Yes, Phil?
Dan, I don't know the wording you would need if there is support to move forward with just the tennis court and the AC1 and AC3.
Those are
Just
all-
speak to those two and not include the third one?
Well, so I believe the board already moved and approved those two encumbrances.
Okay,
For
so
the AC and the tennis courts, those have
We're
already
just
been,
down at the special ed.
it's just the special ed
Oh,
one.
just a spec,
Yeah.
okay.
I like Phil's motion. I'd second it. I'd roll the dice and see if
Yeah.
we can cover
Because
it.
we still have it covered.
Right, we have enough money to cover the 225.
Do people feel that way, or majority feel that way?
And that just gives it more of a swing
Yeah.
if people,
Yeah, because I think this board wants to help with the tax as best we can. What did Plymouth Elementary turn? Did they end up turning, or some of the elementary schools?
they're all over the map.
Okay.
But they gave, I have my chair right here,
Yeah.
but Plymouth gave back,
I'm sorry, I don't
have it at the
I don't
top.
have those numbers off the top of my head.
I don't have it off this, but they retained as much as possible, did some projects, and then returned some as well.
Yeah.
Not the surplus that you have, not even close.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I guess, thinking short term, it makes sense to do, to go with what you're saying, roll the dice. I hope it doesn't bite us the following year and we end up having to, go up more.
So I guess my question is on that, what happens if something does come up and we don't have anything in that balance?
Me?
Somebody, I don't know.
Yes, so if you had things come up and you didn't have retained funds to cover it, you would be faced with a choice of either cutting existing programs to provide the funding or going into a deficit appropriation and raising it the following year, which is got its own set of challenges and obstacles. But
So, which is gonna lead me into my next question.
Yeah.
If we vote on this special ed 220,000 and we voted for it,
well,
and we still had that retained fund balance at the end of September, could that money be put back into the tax revenue or whatever? So like if we voted for it we pay for it up front, whatever, the taxpayers fund that, but the retained balance stays as it is, right? So that, is it 400,000? Am I getting around
Well,
400?
it's currently 150, but if there was a motion, which hasn't happened yet or even been considered yet, to retain the maximum amount, it would go back up to the 345 number. So,
Yes,
just
The
curious.
intent of my motion would be to not support that, but then to turn around and go to the maximum, so we do have to give us that cushion that we need. But you have to do one, it would almost be easier to do we carry over the maximum that we're allowed to by law, and then we know what that is, as opposed to doing it the other, the reverse order. But my intent would be to then support the motion to do the maximum that we can carry over.
which again, can you say that figure, Dan?
My projection of what the retained fund balance capacity will be, and we won't know an exact number until September 1, but this is darn close, I believe, $344,089. 344,089 will be the maximum amount allowed for retained.
And the 178 is not in that.
Correct. Well, no, so the 178 is a portion of what was retained last year that you
Right.
voted in the spring to commit to fund balance, unretained fund balance.
Okay, right, okay.
So how about if I make a motion now to do the
Motion.
fund balance?
Yeah, we've got.
We already have a motion on the floor.
Was that seconded?
I'll say.
Oh, that's right, okay.
So more conversation, do we want to finish that vote?
I have one more question, and I'm not sure if I'm even asking it right, but if we don't put any money in, you were talking about the tax rate increasing by cents, right? Is that if we do the 225, it increases by 3, 4, 2 cents, whatever, now? And then if we don't do it, if we don't put this money in, approve this money, and we do need more, this or more, it goes up to 12 cents, 9 cents? Is that what you were saying?
Not exactly.
I didn't think so. I knew I had it wrong.
So I'm going to try and run through a scenario.
Okay, thank you.
Let's say Phil's motion is adopted, and the purchase order to support unanticipated special ed costs is not approved.
Okay.
And let's say that that's followed up by a motion to retain the maximum amount available. What that means is that the current fund balance of $1.47 million would come down by approximately $1,025,000, which would mean that out of this year's budget, there would be $450,000 of unretained fund balance, which is considered a revenue in the fall to reduce taxation, right? So that 425 would be in addition to the 178,000 you already committed from the prior year's fund balance, right? So in March, when the voters were presented with a budget and an estimated tax rate, it included that 178, but now that there's going to be an additional 425,000 in revenue. The impact of that 425,000 in revenue on the tax rates is approximately 9 cents in Ashland, 9 cents in Camp. This is a reduction in the tax rate over what was projected in March.
Yeah, remember there was an
Right?
increase, now
There
we're
was
going off
a
that.
projected tax rate impact of X, and the numbers I'm telling you are the reduction in that tax rate based on that additional 425,000 in revenue. 9 cents Ashland, 9 cents Campton, 5 cents Holderness, 13 cents Plymouth, 9 cents Romney, 9 cents Thornton, 13 cents Wentworth.
Per thousand.
Tax rate, yes, per
I just wanted to
thousand.
say that out loud.
Per thousand of assessed valuation,
Right.
correct.
I just wanted to.
And I'm fine with either one of those tools. We've used both as using the retained fund balance as well. The only thing is that through the budget process next year, I think there may be some questions about the swing.
Right, so that's gonna
But at some point, we have to deal with it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And who knows if we could come out under budget next year and then the swing's not so bad. I mean, maybe we look at some cost-effective ways next year. Phil?
I think we've seen in the past, I could go through my notebook to find out, but just this present year, we had a surplus of $806,000 in special ed.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, and
That's
the
what I'm saying.
budget this year is based on that figure. So I think we do have room to absorb in the budget in and of itself.
And I think Kyla agrees the past is that history, but
Right.
she's just
At
nervous
some
about what
point,
the
and I think we're
future.
dealing with it tonight, we're gonna have to deal with that perception, whatever it might be, and to level it out. I mean, it's, as far as through the next, we've had more tools than you did before. Yes, I'm worried about unanticipated costs, not just in special ed and just funding public education, but I don't know what that impact will be. But maybe it, by budget season next year, we'll kind of know what now is being pushed locally instead of statewide or federally. And if we still have grants and we still have all that stuff, but it's just something, you all know you have to deal with it at some point. So yes, we don't put it in, we put it in retained fund balance. If there's an issue, then there's a tool to use it, whether there's a building issue or a kid issue, we have some funds to deal with it. And then we'll just go from there as far as the next budget, as far as making up for that swing, which I think Bertie was talking about.
And the cohort thing, I'm hopeful about that because it's in kind and sharing things. So it's not that we have to put all this money out for special ed anymore. It would hopefully be that Merrimack Valley School District is going to do this entity, we're gonna do this entity, Bristol's gonna do, or Laconia is gonna do this entity.
It's more of
so
a hub in one of those towns where they would house everybody and everybody would pay into it. Yeah, so I'm hopeful
Yeah.
something can.
That's not what
mitigate.
Merrimack Valley said when I was down there, so I think there's all kinds of
There's two consortiums.
creative, yeah.
There's the special ed consortium that we're doing. There's also a different high school consortium where any kid can take any high school class at any school. And that is not something I brought to us because we already received, I don't think that would go over well here. As far as, for instance, if we had Latin and a kid from Meredith wanted to take Latin up here, we just allow them to without any payment or anything, and that's not. So we're not doing that consortium, Merrimack Valley's in that consortium. So more of those smaller schools that don't have AP classes, don't have certain classes that they can send kids to surrounding schools.
Okay.
It gives them an option.
Another clarifying question. So families with special services or special needs students, special education, those students will still be served. They will still have resources available to them. The budget that we're talking about is how it's paid for, but that's not going to affect the services that student is receiving.
You're obligated to the services no matter what.
Right? Okay. I want to make sure that that's clear.
Yeah, no, it's mandated, but it's one of those moving parts.
Yes.
You just want to make sure you have it or don't have it. You take a risk, sometimes you don't, but you have the retained fund balance to help deal with that.
Yeah, because it's just the law.
Yep.
Yeah.
It just is.
Yeah, it's with IEPs, you have to.
Yeah. Did they vote on?
All right, so are we ready to vote?
No.
Any more, everybody good? So, want to reiterate, Phil, what your motion
Basically,
is?
the vote would be to deny moving forward with the 225,000.
Seconded by Paul.
Yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We good. Opposed, abstentions? Okay, so one opposition.
And then, do they have to make another motion? I thought it was on retained.
I would recommend a motion to retain the maximum amount of fund balance available.
I'll make
Yes.
that motion.
Do you
Second.
want to list, do we not want to list the amounts? No?
We don't know what the number is.
Okay,
Second.
just because you don't know. All right.
Second.
To retain the full,
Retain the
Maximum
maximum,
allowable.
just to
What's
retain the
that?
maximum amount available.
All right, so that was made by Bernie, seconded by Phil. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. It's complicated. I have no other business.
Okay, and then the
That's
only
helpful.
other business I was gonna say is our auditors he is retiring. Did you know that?
Yes.
So, will we try to figure out, because the same auditor does a few of the schools in the towns, and I
He
think
does all of
that's-
our
So,
towns.
so
wonder in schools.
Jim Roberge is retiring. We have 2 audits left before he's retired, so we've got some time here.
Okay,
And my plan for the school districts, and I might be just assuming too much authority here, but he'll complete our audit for the year ending June 30th, 2026. So basically, he'll wrap up with us in December of 2026,
okay.
right? So, excuse me, yeah. So my plan is to put together an RFP for audit services for all the districts of the SAU, because I would hope the boards would support my position of wanting a single auditor, not dealing with multiple firms. And
Okay.
I would like to have that RFP out by this fall, so that as we're building the FY '27 budget, which is what's going to happen this fall, we can have a realistic expectation of costs, because I think the costs are going to skyrocket. We have had a very, very
We've been
beneficial
lucky.
relationship
Yes, we've been
with the
very lucky.
Roberge firm and the Grizzlack firm before that. I mean, we're paying $4,000 to $8,000 a year per school district for an audit. That's really low.
Yeah, we're lucky.
So, again, I'd like to have good budgetary numbers for this fall for the FY '27 budget.
Okay, privileges of the floor.
Yeah, so I'm Amy, I'm the chairman of the elementary school board. So we do have capital reserve, so that if there's any money left over, every year it's a warrant that goes on our warrant and is voted on. So if there's any money left over, we put $50,000 towards the CIP. It's been super beneficial at the elementary school. We're able to do a lot of big projects, like every time we have to repaint the roof. It might have been helpful for the high school to get the lights. So as a taxpayer and as a, school board member, I would support for you guys to put a CIP on, next year's, as a warrant for next year.
But you also
It's
spend
beneficial.
money that hasn't been spent through the budget to tackle some of these projects as well.
Correct, yeah, we did spend, we retained the max that we could, because you don't know what's gonna happen with funding. And then we always offset anything that we can. And historically, when I was first on the board, we had like $40 left over, so it's not, something that historically we've had leftover money. So the fact that we have it is fantastic
Yeah.
for unanticipated.
Your capital amount is slow, I find. The Plymouth one's low.
It's 50.
Slow or low?
Low.
It's, they put in
50,000.
50, if they have unreserved, they put in 50. Some do higher.
Yeah.
And Holderness puts together up to 100, right?
More.
More.
Yeah.
So they all,
So it just depends on
Yeah.
your school district, but, so I
some put in 10.
Thanks, Amy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Great.
just had a question about like teacher vacancies, and is it easier to get teachers now, or is it as bad as it is on the news?
It's
tough,
not,
right?
yeah.
It's pretty critical.
It's pretty, yeah, we're still looking.
For teachers?
We're still looking for,
Math and special ed.
special ed is very critical right now. I mean,
It's very atypical to be looking for math in the last few years, though.
it is. The piles are a lot shallower.
Yeah, it's a buyer's market.
Well, I know the state for the income that they get and all the different reasons and housing costs and stuff. Are there any creative ideas to try to recruit people, or it's tough?
Well, there's, it's interesting, a lot of folks are we have people that drive from wherever, and a lot of the moves are to get closer home and more money. I mean, that's all it is, you know what I mean? So they can pick and choose where they want to go at this point, where it used to be, we would get 30 applicants, it's like 4, and 2 that are reasonable. So it is critical
Yeah,
in
and-
certain
yeah.
endorsement areas.
Yeah, and because we have not hired math, and this is kind of an odd feeling, we are gonna begin to develop a contingency plan if I can't hire math, in
And
the
Plymouth
next
got
few
rid of their
weeks.
math certification
Yeah,
program.
we're really, yeah, we've been at the.
So that's where we've always recruited
My
from.
wife's something here, because she's out of her meeting, she, I gotta go find out, because Callan's,
Yeah.
oh, there's no math teacher, so. I was a second for me.
Yeah, that's okay. So we're still hopeful, but.
We're still looking.
Stuff with all of that.
If you know any math teachers, let them know.
I was like,
Yeah.
Let us thanks. All right, we've got some correspondence, claims, stuff being passed around to sign. Board member concerns, anybody have anything? So we'll, just before we go into non-public, we'll have our retreat on July 30th, and then one of the last 2 Tuesdays in August, we'll have our August meeting, was that?
So.
Was it like the 18th or 19th? I
Let me
have
check.
it written down somewhere.
It would be,
It's the 19th, first day back for teachers, right?
yeah, yours would be the 19th.
Great.
Yeah, because we'll have the retreat the 30th, and then the 19th is plenty of time.
First board meeting back.
First board meeting, 19th.
Great, all right, so July 30th and August 19th. Thank you. Okay, motion to go into non-public, if you just state what the two we're going.
For personnel and for student issue,
Thank you.
for student confidentiality.
Would like to make that, Barbara? Seconded by Mary Beth?
Yes.
Okay, I'll do roll call, Mary Beth, Barbara.
Thank you.
Dale,
Yeah, of course, thank you.
Paul,
Yes.
Sheila, Marilyn. Tony, Paul, Bonnie.
Yes.
Thank you.